So that's all well and good, but what does it tell us about what governments need to do? So obviously the time we're most interested in is where there's been some sort of economic downturn, and the question is, what should we do in recession? So let's suppose the economy is stuck in recession. Keynesians have, as we said before, a fairly straightforward solution to this. What a Keynesian is saying is, well, look, even if we take, so there's output, there's the price level, aggregate demand's fallen from AD1 to AD2. Let's suppose we're initially at the Nehru. There's short run aggregate supply from a neoclassical perspective. What Keynesian says, well, look, we're at B. You're telling me that eventually the economy is going to self-stabilise. Eventually, we're going to end up down there at point C. Well, Keynesian says, well, fine, this might happen, it might not, it's going to take a long time. If wages and prices are sticky, it might be many, many, many years. Therefore, what we're going to do is we're going to increase aggregate demand. We're going to cut interest rates, and we're going to use fiscal expansion, something like that. And we're just going to push aggregate demand back to where it came from. So the Keynesian solution, is simply to shift aggregate demand back to where it came, to deliberately intervene in the economy using fiscal and monetary expansion. So, that sounds harmless enough. What you might be asking yourself is, well, what is it that neoclassical economists object about that? I mean, even if the economy is going to self-stabilise, why not give it a helping hand? And the reason is that they say that these sorts of policies create distortions in the economy. And if we say, well, what's wrong with each of them? If we take monetary expansion, why is it that neoclassical economists don't want to use either QE or low interest rates? They're saying this is going to create, probably three main problems. Firstly, it's going to create the risk of new bubbles. So we know that the bubble of 2008 was primarily caused by loose monetary policy in response to the event, the dot-com bubble and 9/11. Central banks cut interest rates very, very low, and that created a bubble which then burst and created the financial crisis of 2008. What neoclassical economists are saying is all you're going to do is you can create a new bubble. In particular, what you're going to do is you're going to encourage malinvestment. So you're making money too cheap. You're making it too cheap to borrow. All that's going to happen is that money's going to go into housing. People are going to buy more houses. Property prices are going to rise, and hence that's going to feed into that bubble. Interest rates are simply too cheap for sensible investment to take place. When interest rates are higher, only sensible projects that are going to pay off in the long term will be viable, will be sensible to do. And thirdly, low interest rates are going to allow the survival of zombie firms, the living dead. These are firms that should have died. And remember that neoclassical economists, they think that recessions can be a good thing. So the low aggregate demand, some firms are going to go bust. Which firms? The unproductive and poor ones. And all you're doing is you're creating a misallocation of resources. You're allowing firms that should have survived to die. And therefore, when the economy does recover, the resources that are going to be needed by young and vibrant new businesses are tied up in these old crappy businesses that should have died before. So they're saying you're keeping alive businesses that should have died, and again, that's problematic. It's going to damage long-term growth, because what neoclassical economists believe is that the economy is going to self-stabilize back to the Nehru. But what they want is for that long-run aggregate supply function to be shifting right as fast as possible. In other words, if the economy is going to self-stabilize to long-run aggregate supply, they want it to be to as high a level as is possibly the case. So monetary expansion, they say that's, what they're not saying is it's going to cause inflation. They're not really, because they're saying, well, look, we're in recession. They know perfectly well that in the short term it's not going to cause inflation. They're saying it's going to store up long-term problem. And the same with fiscal expansion. So the problem with fiscal expansion, obviously, is that that's an increase in government spending, decrease in tax. What that's going to do is it's going to lead to borrowing. So it's going to lead to an increase in the budget deficit. The government's going to have to borrow to finance this stuff, and that's going to lead to crowding out of the private sector. It's going to decrease private sector investment, which firstly means that your fiscal expansion is going to be less effective. But what they worry about more is that we're damaging the creation of new factors of production, more efficient factors of production that could create growth in the longer term. So again, you're damaging the ability of the economy to shift out long-run aggregate supply. And since the economy is going to self-stabilize anyway, what's the point? Secondly, there is a danger of malinvestment. We talked elsewhere about white elephants, about the fact that governments often put money into projects that aren't really that useful for the long term. So all we're doing is we're replacing effective private sector investment with ineffective government investment. And thirdly, they're saying this borrowing obviously is going to lead to an increase in the national debt. In the long run, what's going to happen is there's going to have to be an increase in taxation. That's going to damage companies' profitability, and again, it's therefore going to lead to a decrease in investment and a decrease in innovation in the long term, which again is going to slow down potential growth. So what they're saying is that all of these actions, that you're going to take to get an economy back to full employment or an A, they're unnecessary because the economy can self-stabilize anyway, and B, they're counterproductive. They're going to cause a misallocation of resources, or they're going to store up problems that in the long term are going to slow down potential growth or create new bubbles. Therefore, neoclassical economists say, don't do it. Don't intervene in the economy. Leave the markets to sort things out by themselves.